to my channel. Hi everybody, welcome to my channel and welcome to an episode of Missing Kids. This will be the story of a little boy who vanished one summer afternoon, and his name was Kirkland and he vanished, it was the same year that Donna and Wendy vanished, and it could probably, depending on how you look at this case that I'm going to talk to you about, a similar context in some ways. It has some similarity with the context of Donna and Wendy's story. And I will probably be splitting this story up into 3 parts. The first part will be to go over this case briefly. And there aren't that many details. The details that I have been able to find were scant. And while I was researching Donna and Wendy's case, I found that there were so many other cases that occurred in 1973 as well. And this was one of them. The next 2 parts will deal with the history of the Ford Hotel in my city and the perpetrator who was eventually put into prison, but we're going to get to that later. So, 3 parts, guys. If you recall, quite a while back, I did a case review on the story of Emmanuel Jacks, and it's the similar neighborhood where Emmanuel Jacks was lured by 3 men, and it's the very same neighborhood, guys. And like Emmanuel Jacks, Kirkland worked doing odd jobs on the streets, such as selling flowers, carrying groceries. He was 9 years old. He was an amazing, very mature and responsible, dark-haired little boy, and he was also very trusting. He grew up adoring and trusting in the adults around him. And so when he bumped into the perpetrator on July the 26th, 1973, he wasn't expecting what he eventually got. So little Kirkland had been working from a supermarket on Parliament Street in my city, and he had been earning money, and so he was a regular there. He carried bags back and forth to the neighboring homes nearby. Now, the hotel, the Ford Hotel, was not far from there, and the Ford Hotel is like the Cecil Hotel, and it is a very infamous hotel that had a long history of violence and crime, and we'll be talking more on that later. And so this case would have been the last chilling episode to the drama that followed this eerie hotel since it opened on the corner of Dundas and Bay in 1928. Now, on July the 26th, 1973, little Kirkland bumped into John Macbeth Finlayson, 37 years old, an alcoholic drifter and a baker. And Kirkland was then abducted, taken to the hotel, the Ford Hotel, and among other things, guys, he was very badly abused, bitten, strangled. I don't want to get into it. And in fact, I'm lacking a lot of details, and I'm thankful for that. happened that Kirkland had two little friends who used to work alongside him, probably selling the flowers on the street or maybe even within the supermarket. I'm not altogether too sure. And they went looking for little Kirkland. I'm assuming that they knew of his whereabouts, and maybe there had been a discussion. Maybe the gentleman asked Kirkland to come and help him with something. That is how Emmanuel Jacks was lured and eventually lost his life. So I'm not too sure. Those details are very sketchy, but I'm imagining that's sort of the kind of scenario which took place. And so what happened, guys, was that these two boys, these friends of Kirkland's, went to the hotel looking for him. And I'm not exactly sure what transpired, but they went up to the room. So what I'm figuring is that there were details that were easily accessed by the front desk and by the boys. They knew where to go. They knew who to look for. Obviously, they had to have the man's name or they would not have been able to go checking into the hotel. I'm not sure if they went looking for Kirkland based on solely his description. I'm not sure what happened before Kirkland actually went up or was abducted. And so it's really sad that I don't have those facts, because that could help prevent another tragedy. So it was room 955, and what happened was the boys went up, I suppose, with a hotel clerk to enter the room. Probably, very likely, the perpetrator had fled, and he left the child on the bed. And so when the hotel clerk went into the room, he was horrified, as were the other two children. He was absolutely horrified. But then, with the past of this hotel that I'm speaking of, maybe he should have seen it coming. I'm not sure. And so his friends saw him, Kirkland's friends saw him lying lifeless on the bed. And it was 9-year-old Kirkland Deasley for sure. They were able to identify their friend. Now, John Macbeth, who was 37 years old, then immediately became the object of a nationwide search for the killing of that child. And so the search went on for a bit, but the thing is, they had his identity from the hotel room registry. So I'm wondering why this man could not have been in his right mind. It was, I'm not saying that he should have been sneakier than that. No, I'm saying that he wasn't thinking logically, obviously. And he was, even though he had the mind of a criminal, he was not making much sense in how he went about handling this crime. While, probably in the next vlog, we're going to find out why. I think we'll be talking about it in the third part. And I'm going to touch on that in just a minute. There was an anonymous tip that went into the detectives, and the detectives were able to track down John Macbeth on a road way out in Burlington, far out of the city. And thankfully, that anonymous tip was a great help. unfortunately, it didn't help little Kirkland. Now, 5 days later, little Kirkland was buried wearing his baseball uniform. And, wow, along with the baseball uniform, he had his baseball glove and a ball and a hockey trophy, the things that he really treasured the most. So obviously this little boy was fond of sports. Mourning at his funeral were the parents of Kirkland, who were Ab and Carol Ann, and his slightly older sister, Deborah, who was 10 years old at the time of this tragedy. I can only imagine the children involved in this horrible, tragic case. The two boys who found him in the hotel room, and Deborah, the victim's sister. I can't imagine how deeply they were affected. It must have been horrible. Now, the crime took place in July of 1973, and by October, the Ford Hotel was reduced to a pile of rubble. And I'm so glad. But the crimes didn't stop. They went on elsewhere. Horrific crime enraged the public and led the public to write scads and scads of letters to reinstate the death penalty for murder. And so it was an outcry, an outrage, and it was one of the first cases that began to really change the perspective of the public with respect to this sort of crime in my city. And as for John Macbeth, I have to say that he was found not guilty. I am going to leave it at that and continue with our next part in the next episode of Missing Kids. Thanks so much for listening and watching.